I'm sitting in a spring wood north of the city of Brighton on the south coast of the United Kingdom. It's just 7:30, a little earlier in the day than it should be perhaps, to launch Night Blooms, published by Makina Books and available through cornerhousepublications.org. I say earlier because, as its title suggests, the book Night Blooms concerns flowers encountered after darkness, in the glare of my head torch while running. The book mainly comprises photographs of these flowers, but there are some texts as well, and I wanted to read some of those to you this evening. Although we did a test run on Monday afternoon, I can't hear what you can hear, but I hope that as well as my voice, there will be space for you to hear the atmosphere of the woods as they start to settle down for dusk. If it looks as if the feed is frozen, it's probably just me pausing to listen to the sounds around. I think I'm going to talk for around 10 to 15 minutes. However liable this may be to mishap, I'm going to shift between those two cameras on my phone. I want to thank Robin Silas Christian from Makina Books for all of his work on Night Blooms, and also Patrick Fisher from Frontwards Design for the amazing cover and layout. It feels like this has been a long journey, necessarily so, given how I wanted to witness the turning of 5 seasons as part of the process. We thought long and hard about whether we should release a book during these current difficult times, and we eventually decided it made sense to try this. The numbers of people who bought the book on pre-order are, hopefully, testament to how this was the right direction to take. We're about 6 kilometres from my home here, and the area is the setting for quite a few of the photographs in the book. The bluebells, for example, that are now drooping, leaching blue, were bright and upright for the torch when I photographed them here. There's a picture in the book too of an electricity distribution transformer, and I had to look up what it was. And it's up there on a pole just behind me, and it was about 100 yards away from here. And somewhere in front of where I'm sitting, on a path that's always sharp with flint, there was a spray of cow parsley beneath a pylon that I just had to take a picture of as I went past. So the first text I want to read to you situates where we are. I'll read it first, and then I'll tell you a little bit more. The further field, a circuit of the estate. The further field, the croft, Hicks Hill, the menagerie, New Barn Field, Old Bottom, the Lodge Fields, High Park Corner, Millbank, Sheepgate, Bow Hill, Shamble Down Bottom, Mouston, the Four Lords Burg, Balmer Huff, No Man's Land, Buckland Bank, Broad Shekels, Lantern Lane, North Lane, Hitherknoll Field, Haycroft, Old Forge, the 4 Acres, Further West Lane, Short Heath Piece. Those phrases are all field names. They're administrative divisions of the landscape that date from a map from 1799 that I found in a local history archive that's about a kilometre from where we're sitting. The field names are chosen because they mark out a well-trodden circuit that I take when I'm running here in the day and in the night when I was taking the photographs and writing the text for this book. The place we're at was one of those field names. It's called High Park Corner, And what I like about those names is the way that they mix qualifiers like distance, near, further, hither, direction, north, west, age, old and new, agricultural practices. There are the words croft, sheep, barn, forge, heath, hay and mill, the proprietary possessions of bourgeois individualism, with local dialect and topography, bank, hill, bottom. The no man's land and further field are my favourite names. But all names speak to the economic structuring of this landscape that I'm only vaguely aware of when I come here for my leisure. Much of these territorial boundaries that existed when these names were created have been erased from sensory perception. Now this is parkland, once an estate, then it was a bequest to the local population, and now there are areas formerly devoted to a university, to permaculture societies, to a woodyard, to a small village with a church. And there are all kinds of informal things that happen here too. One thing that does come into my awareness, both in the photographs and in the texts, is the shifting between seasons. Given how I'm moving on foot, these seasonal changes are most active at ground level, from the knees down to my feet and what lies below. So I want to read the next text from the book. Underfoot. Spring holds tracks, distinct and less distinct, paws, soles, tires, webbed and clawed feet. Ferns snap to burst green scent. Nettles jolt shins, bramblethorns scrape. Summer's baked dirt thumps hollow in places, grasses desiccate and droop. Ground down chalk and puffed up dirt dust ankles, the powder's pallets only seen once the socks are peeled off, the bath drained away. Autumn's rains mend the craquelure, fill the dew ponds, create rivulets for leaves to sail down and raise puddles that winter will laminate with ice when fresh snow squeaks and glints crystals for my torch. The speed that the terrain transforms here can be surprisingly fast. It doesn't feel too long ago that some of the trails near here were filthy wet with mud, and yet now they're so dry that their surfaces resemble what gets left in the biscuit barrel once all the cookies have gone. The wildflowers in night blooms represent their own calendar, with the year mapped out by what appears and what disappears, what grows, what fades. In February it was wild daffodils, sweet purple violets. March was celandine and ox-eye daisies, coltsfoot and wood anemone, primrose and the first dandelions. April was wood sorrel and cowslips and buttercups, and May, which we're in now, has been cow parsley and campions and crane's bill, and of course hawthorn, the May tree, with the bluebells fading. I'm interested in the way that each flower coalesces so many forms of knowledge at once. The flower is simultaneously an object of botanical scrutiny, the subject of folklore, a cure for fever, a message to a lover, These names of flowers carry their meanings and their associations, as do the descriptions in the books on wildflowers that I collected while I was writing this, and sequenced them into the next text that I want to read to you. Yellow in a spike, waxy white and bell-shaped, clusters on the tip can form dense thickets along shady banks, hedgerows, heaths and waste ground, shady places and old walls, an escape from cultivation, rides and clearings, pensiveness, cheerfulness, end and beginning. Pairs of opposite picked out in winter, carrying it upwards in warmth, sky blue and almond scented, kidney shaped to heart shaped, the May tree of old smells harsh when bruised, becomes increasingly attractive, toothed, wrinkled, stalked. On the banks of streams, rivers, canals and sea lochs, where rings of bristles, of waysides, and especially of railway embankments, all very much alike. I do not care for you. They close at sunset, almost in the blink of an eye, a standard at the back, a lover. Otherwise dreary is in decline, in pavement cracks and pitted grassy places, in copses and thin woods, the delicate appearance of wreaths of smoke. In the evening, en masse, is almost ethereal, turning their faces away from the blast. The photographs do not only focus on the flowers caught in my head torch as I'm ambling through these woods. Other objects come into view: a deflated bouncy castle, a sleeping bag, shelters and dens, snow and sleet, foxes and fences. Some things never quite make it into the frame, and in that sense that's one of the roles of the texts that appear in the book. They're a kind of repository of the remainder of the things that weren't photographed. Using a trail camera, I managed to capture a flash of a fox and a brush of badger fur. I caught the glow of rat's eyes, but I never caught a bat in my lens or an owl. The last two texts I want to read before I finish talk of these frustrations and rewards, when you miss the expected and you find the unexpected. So thanks again to Robin and Patrick and all the Makina family, and thanks to Corner House in Manchester, from whom you can order the book Night Blooms. And thanks to the people who've already bought the book, and thanks to you for tuning in. I'm going to flip the camera around one more time, and I'm going to read two last texts. It's been really fun doing this, but it is now starting to get cold. So thanks very much. So this first one is called the Undarks. The Undarks. The Undarks is another dialect word. It's a local Sussex expression that describes those evenings that are lit by the moon's light, and therefore are not evenings that you would want to be active as a smuggler in Sussex and Kent. The Undarks. A coin of silver, a coin of tin, a coin of bronze, of amber, of sulphur, of chalk, a split, a shard, a sliver, a squashed reel, a gnawed wheel, a glow to show the racing clouds, a spot to darken the branch lattice, and a season later to flicker behind shaking leaves. I saw 3 halos, and once saw 2 at once, and I saw night shadows of me and trees, but I never caught in trough or puddle or pond a rippled reflection, and only ever imprisoned the smallest smudges in my camera. So this final text that I'm going to read is another of these stories about frustrations, expectations and the unexpected. This one's called Nightjar. Through the park, across the fairway, over the scrub, into the woods. The torch brought cobwebs and curled ferns to light, drew downed trunks from the dark, trunks levelled, trunks angled, upper branches growing upright, root bowls mixing moss, earth, chunks of chalk, an outline in ash, a glittering of glass and pale buckled parts, fire blackened and fire twisted branches, residues of the car that I'd come to photograph. I followed the sallow, shallow furrows down which the wreck had been dragged from the clearing towards the last first trees, each breath lengthening, heart thumps softening, less startled now by snapped twigs, by soft scufflings in the understory, or by feathery adjustments above. A few steps along the scrubland path and I turned on impulse to look back and caught the shadow flashes of two bats in fast fabric flight, swerving silhouetted branches. Out of this reflex, a memory, one that spooled back to take in what had gone before, the cobwebs and ferns and the burnt out car, as much as it fixed what came after. Settling into a wet grass seat, I watched more bats work the outskirts, one occasionally shooting a parabola above my head. Lower down the slope, an owl launched, giving visible form to the cries that I'd been hearing all evening, and as I shifted my posture to reach into my pocket for my camera, I spotted a tiny speck of green light smouldering from a stem 2 feet where I'd been sitting for the last 5 minutes. My first glowworm. Leaning closer to focus my eyes, to focus the camera, I heard, coming from somewhere in the woods I'd just left, a parched pulsing, insect-like and almost mechanical, yet decipherable as the chirr that I'd once read about, my first nightjar. Thanks very much.